The British pensioners who have invested their savings in a German company from Langenhagen are demanding clarification and compensation from the Chancellor. The founder of the German property group is accused of investment fraud with damage of over 1 billion euros, which was collected from investors worldwide. The 2,000 British investors talk about a massive financial scandal and failure of the German authorities. If they do not get the money back from the insolvent company, the federal government should compensate the victims, they demand in their letter. By the way, you should stay tuned until the end if you don't want to miss anything interesting. And if you don't want to miss anything at all, just subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click the little bell. Only then you'll get a notification when I publish another video. Richard Jägerman had known and trusted Terry, his financial advisor, for 25 years. Terry had already invested over 330,000 euros in the German property group, formerly Dolphin, and also advised Jägerman to protect himself with his investment for his retirement years. Terry can be trusted 100%, says the 65-year-old who has been living in Germany for several years. The yields between 10 and 15% and the location Germany convinced him, and he started in September 2014 with $100,000. That was that time over 83,000 euros. The interest payments always came on time at the beginning, so I decided a year later to invest an additional 125,000 euros and in 2016 another 100,000 euros, says Jägerman. He invested a total of 310,000 euros, which he had put aside over the years to top up the state pensions payments. Now that money is gone, and Jägerman, like some 2,000 other investors in the UK, some 1,800 investors in Ireland and many more in other countries, have found they were the victims of massive investment fraud. The German property group, which used to be called Dolphin Trust and Dolphin Capital, has been advertising for investors in Great Britain, Ireland, South Korea, Singapore, Israel and Russia since the beginning of the 2010s and promised unusually high returns of 10 to 15% for investments of 2 up to 5 years. Charles Smethurst, founder and longtime managing director of GPG, presented plans to renovate listed buildings, which were then to be sold at more favorable tax rates. Today, he is the focus of an investigation into investment fraud. British investors accuse him of perfecting a pyramid scheme. Why did Jägerman and several thousand other retirees and private investors trust Charles Smethurst? The market in which Dolphin, later GPG, operated seemed safe and stable, says Jägerman. He knew about the housing shortage in Germany and also that great importance is attached to monument protection here. The business model was attractive, says Jägerman. Mark Bennett from Lichfield, near Birmingham, also invested his savings, around £325,000 in GPG. He also found the business model convincing. I was invited to Berlin to look at the renovation work on the property, says Bennett. He also assumed that the German market was so strictly regulated that his investment was safe. In June 2019, both seniors realized that there were problems with GPG. Jägerman was already living in Germany at the time. Bennett tried to clarify the questions with his financial advisor in Great Britain. As of June 2019, no more interest was paid. Jägerman and Bennett are told that the real estate projects would be delayed due to stricter regulations in Germany. That was also the year when the deadline for my first borrower's note loan expired, so GPG would have had to repay me the first sum of over 80,000 euros, says Jägerman. But nothing came of it. In September 2020, it was clear that GPG was under bankruptcy. For Jägerman, it's a disaster. These crooks ruined my retired life, he says. I've worked for 30 years and now I haven't got any of it, says Jägerman. Jägerman, Bennett and 2,000 other private investors joined forces, not only because they are demanding their money back, but also because they are disappointed by the lack of information in Germany. After all, GPG and its approximately 200 companies were active in Germany. Investors have filed a criminal complaint against Charles Smethurst and several people from the GPG environment with the Hanover Public Prosecutor's Office, but apart from a statement by Smethurst that Business Insider reported, nothing is known about the status of the investigation. But that's normal. Lawyer Peter Mettel represents some of the injured parties and is amazed at the slow clarification. We would have liked that all documents and accounts had been confiscated immediately and that the founder had no possibility to black out or run away, says Peter Mettel. I've seen cases in which thieves went into custody for 50 euros. Politicians like Lisa Paus from the Greens or Fabio De Masi from the left also called for the scandal to be cleared up. Because the damage is estimated at over 1 billion euros, of which the real estate value is currently only around 150 million euros, Jägermann and Bennett fear that the money will soon be nowhere to be found either. Their situation makes it even more difficult that, based on current knowledge, GPG has not recruited any German investors. They knew why. The victims of the alleged investment fraud are all, with the exception of Jägermann's, abroad. In an open letter to Chancellor Angela Merkel, they describe their hopeless situation and want to know what responsibility the German government bears for such fraud. While the UK case is now on the table with several authorities, investors see their options in Germany limited. So far, politicians and the judiciary have reacted only sparingly, but it is slowly becoming clear to some German authorities that this massive fraud is one of the biggest financial scandals in Germany and that the German financial watchdog has also failed completely. Jägermann wrote to the Chancellor on behalf of the British investors. The strong rule of law Germany was apparently undermined by Dolphin with a few tricks. To get rid of the supervisory authority, they simply collected money abroad, says the letter. The investors demand from the Chancellor that the Dolphin GPG fraud case is given top priority by the federal government and is put on the political agenda as soon as possible. The aim of the investors is to get their savings back. If the stolen money is no longer traceable, we expressly ask the federal government to compensate the victims, demands the Commission of GPG investors. And they also want the federal government to apply greater pressure to clarify the case. It is frustrating for many that the head of the suspected fraud, Charles Smethurst, was not arrested despite his admission of deliberate deception of investors. However, it could be difficult with compensation from the state, estimates lawyer Peter Mettel. In the UK, there is compensation when the placement or advice is provided by a regulated financial advisor. We don't have that, explains Mettel. Although he is of the opinion that GPG was about business requiring a permit and that BaFin would have been responsible for this, the Federal Ministry of Finance excluded the liability of the supervisory authority. As a result, there is currently hardly any legal basis for compensation from the state. Investors feel abandoned by the German regulatory and judicial authorities. My retirement money is gone, says Mark Bennett. It's the first thing I think about in the morning and the last thing I think about in the evening, he says. The red flags were there, says Bennett, because the companies had not submitted any annual financial statements since 2015. Your authorities watched and did nothing, he said. And there, sorry, but I have to disagree with them in a lot of cases. First of all, They did not do any business in Germany. They only had customers from abroad. So they used a gap in the law. So the BaFin wasn't responsible for them. And the next thing is, I'm coming back to the political responsibility there. The next thing is, the state didn't steal your money, they did. They cannot use taxpayers' money, my money, to pay you for your investments. I'm going to comment on in a second. And the next thing is, the government cannot put pressure on the judiciary. Our judiciary, as it's supposed to be, is independent, and they are working in the speed they can. And with a lot of cases here, they have a lot to do. And this is not the only case they have. And they will work in their speed with the personnel they have. They have to investigate, as you said yourself, 200 companies. And that takes time. And nobody will put down another case for your sake to do it. Of course, I can completely understand how sad you are, and I'm sorry for you that you lost so much money. But there is one point. If somebody promises me in a time where you don't get any interest from your bank because of the zero interest thing in the EU, if somebody offers me 10 to 15% interest, I would stop talking to these people. And to be honest, I must say, people who invested there were just greedy. I'm sorry. In a time like this, who expects 10 to 15% interest has a lot of responsibility themselves to have invested there. That would have triggered my red flags. Not after years that there were no reports coming. So some people invested after 2015, although there were no statements there in 2015. In 2016, 17, and so on. Why did they do that? And so they have to have a look on themselves, what they did, why they did this, and not put the blame on anybody else. And I, for once, would be extremely, and I'm sorry, pissed off if the German government would use taxpayers' money on that. Sorry. We are free people. We make our own decisions. And this happened in many countries. But 10 to 15% interest rate raises all my alarm clocks. And you still invested. And if you do investments, never invest with money you can't afford to lose. That's why I'm not doing anything on the stock market. I have no money I can afford to lose. And so I don't. But that was the word for Sunday. But it has to be, because putting everything on the government, it's very comfy to do that. But it's not the way to do that. And the political thing is, the only responsibility politics has now is to have a look at this gap in the law, that they were not under BaFin regulation because they were not getting money from anyone in Germany and only from people abroad, and to close that gap. But that's all they are responsible for now. But everything else that the BaFin didn't watch them was as it was supposed to be. And they have to check if they need to do that, or if that's their business at all, when there are only investments in other countries. As long as there is no investment in Germany, I'm not even sure that they should do that. But we will see. But there's another topic I still have for you today. Delays and confusion at the UK's port threatens to put hundreds of small and medium-sized exporters out of business. The collapse of Britain's trade with the EU will continue into the summer after the failure to recruit up to 30,000 customs agents, despite government assurances that normal service has resumed. Industry groups have warned. And so, delays and confusion at the UK's ports, which have resulted in 40% of trucks crossing the channel with empty containers, threatens to put hundreds of small and medium exporters out of business and cost the government millions of pounds in lost trade tariffs. The warnings follow the most dramatic monthly fall in exports from the UK to the EU since records began 20 years ago. Exports tumbled by almost 41% as thousands of trucks failed to gain entry to the EU, mostly following customs hold-up due to a lack of compliant paperwork. Businesses also reported that a lack of customs agents meant they were unable to respond to orders from customers based in the EU or found their goods were returned at huge cost. In January, which marked the first month since leaving the EU on terms agreed by Boris Johnson's government, official data showed that goods exports to the 27-member bloc fell by a staggering £5.6 billion, while imports fell by almost 30% or £6.6 billion. The Cabinet Office Minister Michael Gove has answered critics of the UK's failure to prepare for border checks by delaying a previously agreed timetable for imports. Under a new scheme, controls on animal product imports will be pushed back from April until October, and checks on most other goods will only take place at UK ports from next January. But Brussels has insisted that UK exporters comply with EU rules on imports, forcing many British firms to find a customs agent and a vet to certify that animal products are safe to enter the EU. Richard Burnett, chief executive of the Road Haulage Association, said the deluge of exporters needing help to fill in paperwork meant customs agents were turning business away. He said, "The delay to import checks is welcome, but not a universal fix. We cannot be confident that operators will even be ready on October 1st. The number of skilled customs agents and veterinarians in place across the EU to complete the relevant documentation still falls short of what is needed." I think he meant the UK, not the EU. In the EU, we have enough of them. Responding to the trade data, Lord Frost, the cabinet minister responsible for Britain's relationship with the EU, said there was a unique combination of factors that meant it was inevitable that we would see some unusual figures this January. He added these effects were now starting to unwind, and overall freight volumes had been back to normal for over a month now. They were so proven wrong and are still telling that fairy tale. Richard Ballantyne, head of the British Ports Association, said most ports had seen a recovery in shipments over recent weeks, although the delay to import checks had put off a problem rather than resolved it. Rod McKenzie, the RHA head of public affairs, said that with 40% of containers travelling to the EU without goods, shipment numbers failed to show the full impact of new Brexit-related red tape at UK borders. And so much about back to normal. He said the recruitment of customs agents needed to rise by around 30,000 to nearer 50,000 to cope with the extra regulations. Judging by our own experience of customs agents, they are swamped with calls and turning away business, which is ridiculous when we have had 4 years to sort this out. I agree. He added that delays and loss of exports would continue until more customs agents were trained, leading to delays until at least the summer. Small and medium businesses are likely to be hardest hit by the dearth of agents that play a crucial role in handling the mountain of new paperwork being imposed on firms that wish to continue trading in the rest of Europe. Alex Altman, a partner at accountants Blick Rotenberg and the head of the firm's Brexit advisory group, said, "There is no quick fix to this problem. What we need is an exporter support scheme to help British companies. Ministers have asked local chambers of commerce to train new customs agents, but the process is understood to be hampered by a lack of information and training for chamber staff to pass on." Altman, who is also a chair of the British Chamber of Commerce in Germany, said the pay of customs agents was low and meant recruitment was difficult. He added, extending the customs easements at the UK border until the end of 2021 is a confession by the government that the border operating model is not working. Imports from the EU are still more than 30% down compared to last year, and businesses struggle to deal with the new red tape. A spokesperson for the HMRC said, in total, the government has made over £80 million available to support the customs intermediary sector to deal with EU trade in 2021. HMRC designed the grant scheme to be used flexibly by the sector to ensure that they can increase their capacity as they see best fit, whether this involves recruitment, training, or better use of IT. Recent research has shown the sector expected to see a near fourfold increase in their ability to process declarations, and that there are intermediary businesses who have spare capacity. The British Chambers of Commerce has told ministers that the difficulties faced by businesses on the ground go well beyond just teething problems, and disruption to UK-EU trade flows had persisted into March. Some economists have forecast that delays at UK borders will drag on growth for at least the rest of the year, while the Treasury's official economic forecaster, the Office for Budget Responsibility, has said the thin Brexit deal signed on Christmas Eve would knock 4 percentage points off UK growth over the longer term. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel. Auf Wiedersehen.